Self-love is great, but it's actually in relational love and relational contexts that we grow. It's just kind of like if you have a kid and you put them in a closet, it's terrible. They're not going to grow. We need to be nourished. We need to receive and give love. We need others around us. This is how we're social people. And it doesn't change just because we're adults. We need to have people around us.
You're listening to Sex with Emily. I'm Dr. Emily, and I'm here to help you prioritize your pleasure and liberate the conversation around sex. On today's episode, I speak with sex therapist Todd Baratz. We get into why we need to stop diagnosing everyone. Spoiler alert, not every person you don't get along with is a narcissist, among others. We get into all of it. We also talk about how oral sex can make or break your relationship. And finally, Todd shares tips on dating men who don't always know how to connect emotionally and what to do about it. Please rate and review Sex with Emily wherever you listen to the show. You can do it right now. It helps get the show out to more people, and it only takes you 2 seconds. So you can do it right now. You can find me on Instagram and YouTube and TikTok and Twitter, Facebook, X, all the places. It's all at Sex with Emily. All right, everyone, enjoy this episode. On today's episode, we're speaking with sex therapist Todd Baratz, who also has an awesome podcast and Instagram with the same name, Diagnosing. We also talk about why we really need to be interviewing our parents to truly understand how to date better. And my friend Dr. Wednesday Martin and I have fun grilling Todd about what his clients share about their sex lives. And this gets good. I love co-hosting with Wednesday, as she's a New York Times bestselling author who has written on topics including female sexuality and popular culture for major publications like the New York Times, The Atlantic, The Daily Beast, and Harper's Bazaar. She's an accomplished writer and a sex coach. Find more Wednesday on Instagram at Wednesday Martin, PhD. So excited to have Todd Baratz on the show. I want to start with the title of your book, How to Love Someone Without Losing Our Mind, Forget the Fairy Tale and Get Real.
Love is crazy making. It's going to make you lose your mind. It's a bit of a bait and switch, but anyone that's ever been in love or had any kind of relationship, it doesn't even matter if it's with an adult partner, family member, a friend, people are going to drive you fucking crazy. And that's because we're all really hard to be with, especially our adult partners.
But listen, this is a funny thing because for me, I'm supposed to be an expert at this, and I found your book really helpful. And one of the things that I found the most helpful was this idea about getting real. What are the most outdated kind of rules and ideas that we have, and how do we get more real about it when it comes to relating and dating and sex?
The outdated rules are any of the rules that are coming out of the fairy tale that we've all internalized, that, we should find one specific person who's going to fulfill us in all of the certain ways, sexually, emotionally, intellectually, financially, geographically, and that one person, it's going to be easy and it won't require a lot of work. And that there's a certain way to do it, and the timing of sex, whether to have it on the first date or the second date or the third month, all of those rules, all of the shoulds, all of the things lacking nuance and complexity.
Okay, so you think we're all walking around thinking like this person has to be my everything. They have to be my lover, my partner, my best friend. They have to be great to travel with, listen to all my problems, my issues, my challenges. And that's what's keeping us. You think that we have just too high of expectations and we're not relating to the fact that it can be hard. It is
exactly, and that we have to love them all the time.
I love this idea of letting go of the one. Because for many people, it's going to take many people, and then it's going to get even more complicated. But this idea of the one, I think I was very invested in that my whole life until I started doing this kind of work.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's hard for people to let go of the idea of the one.
It really is. It really is a challenge. Like there's one person that's gonna fit. And like, what do you see? Do you feel like you have to talk people off the ledge with that too, Todd, a lot in your practice? I mean, I've never believed in the one, but I've never believed in the one because I think there's many ones.
No, I mean, in doing what I do, I see individuals and couples and they're constantly getting in and out of relationships. Couples that I'm seeing are breaking up or staying together. Individuals that I'm seeing are writhing in pain from heartbreak. And then 6 months later, they're meeting somebody new and getting into another relationship. So the one is just this fairy tale thing. But getting back to the rules thing, there aren't like specific rules. They'll come up and you'll know it when I was with my partner and I was like, he should have texted me. That's a rule, thinking that somebody should have texted us. Another rule, I told them and so therefore they should have done it. Because I told you, you should do it. These rules that we have about the people that we have in our lives, it doesn't matter who it is. It could be our mother. My mother should be checking in on me because that's her role as my mother.
Right.
All of the, and which, should she? I don't know. I'm an adult. Do I need her to do that anymore? Do I need my boyfriend currently to text me his status every hour? I don't know, but those are rules that we've all internalized. Then there are more like very specific, explicit rules like the one and you should be happy and live happily ever after that I think most of us are knowing is
Right.
complete bullshit. But the rules
Yeah.
are more of these ideas and experiences we have that are more emotions about what our partners should or should not be doing for us.
So it's like we should all over our relationship and our partners.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
the other thing that's so cool about your work is that, I mean, and your handle says it all, your nonsense, that you really get into with people on your IG and in your book about how we do tend to overdiagnose ourselves or be overdiagnosed. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because that really set me free about your work.
Yeah, everything is a self-diagnosis, or we're diagnosing other people with something. So like I was saying, my partner is a problem because he doesn't XYZ. I'm a problem because I'm not doing whatever. We have the labels and these shoulds and these ideas of how we believe our lives are supposed to be lived. And when we don't live up to those ideals, which we don't, or our partners don't because they can't, or our relationships don't because they fundamentally cannot, we tend to label them and we want to be analytical and figure out what the problem is. Totally understandable and reasonable process. But when we think about ourselves, others, and relationships, just like the weather, they're going to be filled with disappointment and rain and shittiness. And it's only going to exacerbate the anxiety we feel. That's all hypervigilance and anxiety about getting hurt. And we've reframed health, which is really just anxiety. We've reframed anxiety as health, meaning these are the red flags, these are the green flags, these are the things that you should look for. This is how you analyze the other person to figure out if they're a good match for you. All of that is just basic anxiety about being hurt and experiencing pain, and the hurt and pain that we witnessed our mothers and our fathers experience, and so on and so on. This is intergenerational trauma that we've developed all of these rules and all of this really fancy labels, and now everyone's a people pleaser and everyone trauma is trending, which is helpful. But everyone's become so hyper vigilant and anxious about either themselves meeting up to these expectations or their partners or their relationships that we can no longer be present anymore. We can't be present in our relationships or for ourselves. And because of that, we're fundamentally disconnecting, which I think is a collective defense mechanism to disconnect and to try to distance ourselves from getting hurt, which is reasonable.
You mentioned though earlier there is that we all have this trauma. We all have this intergenerational trauma that we have to identify. And that is part of the therapeutic process. And we need to work it through before we can be in a healthy relationship or work it through in the relationship. But can you talk about how we can all go about doing that? Like maybe we diagnose the trauma or I've got this thing that happened, but I don't think a lot of us really understand it and go deep with it.
Yeah, well, you can work through your trauma before, during, or after a relationship. And we do it constantly, whether we're aware of it consciously or not. But everybody has some version of trauma. And I start my book off talking about my mother's trauma because I think it's really important that if we're going to become self-aware, which is really a requirement for relational health, that we understand our parents' traumas and we understand our intergenerational story. So, I asked questions about what was dating like, what was love like, and I asked what were your red flags, and she's like, red whats? Because a lot of this is cultural, and so growing up, she didn't have red flags and toxic narcissists. She was just told to get married. So part of her story was my story that I inherited, and part of my trauma was her trauma. So what we're talking about is developing a deeper sense of self and self-awareness by first connecting with our parents and the people that raised us and our experiences during childhood, and to use that when those get triggered with our adult partners. But it's fully necessary, and anybody that says they had a normal childhood is either in, extreme denial or is really good at emotional repression. Childhood is fundamentally flawed, and we all have attachment issues. And so the more we can become aware of and self-aware of what those issues are, whether they are highly traumatic or passively traumatic, the more we can show up in our relationships and be present.
I love the list of questions just that you have in your book to how to interview your parents, not interrogate them, but interview them and ask them questions so we can really understand where we came from. You kind of mentioned that that's what you did with your mom. And I think that's such a helpful list for people. Like I'm going to do it.
Todd, one of the things that you really taught me in our friendship was that growth happens in relation to other people.
Yeah.
So, and like that was a real moment for me because I had been told, look in the mirror, validate yourself, meditate, blah, blah, blah. And you were showing me that I could grow in relationships better and faster and more, relationships with friends, with my family, with partners. This was a really cool intervention you make. And at the same time, the term validation is something that you get into a lot. So Can you talk about this? Like, how is it that we turn to this thing where we only care about our own opinion of ourselves? I feel like you're suggesting that we've gone too far in the direction of self validation and self love. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, that's not, and whenever I say something like you don't need self-love, people really get pissed off because they want
People get worked
to
They
up.
do.
really invest in the idea that they can control their lives by loving themselves more. Self-love is great, but it's actually in relational love and relational contexts that we grow. It's just kind of like if you have a kid and you put them in a closet, it's terrible. They're not going to grow. We need to be nourished. We need to receive and give love. We need others around us. This is how we're social people. And it doesn't change just because we're adults. We need to have people around us. We need to have these new experiences in order to
And that's the
grow.
relational, right? That's the relational part.
What I talk a lot about in the book is this idea of a corrective emotional experience, which is one example I gave was I was with my partner. I crashed his car. I was freaking out because I grew up and my father used to punish me if I overflowed the toilet or broke a glass. So I was like, fuck, this is it. He's breaking up with me. I went to the parts store. I literally bought parts for a car, which, like, you know me, I can't really do much. And so I was in the garage trying to fix the car, convinced he was going to be mad at me. I was like 23. And he found me doing that, and he pulled me up and kissed me and hugged me and said, "What the fuck are you doing?" He's like, "You can't do anything. Why are you doing this?" And I learned it was a corrective emotional experience. I learned that I could fuck up and still be loved. And I couldn't have learned that by looking in the mirror and saying, you deserve love. You're wonderful. You're beautiful. Look in the mirror and say those things, but we have to have actual experiences in a relational dynamic over and over in order to change some of those core beliefs, mine being, if I fuck up, I'll be punished. And that's not to say that in that one moment I had this instant revelation that, oh, I can fuck up all the time. I'll still receive. No, I had to have that throughout our relationship. I had to have that experience with my friends. I had that experience ongoing with my therapist. Again, it wouldn't have happened just by reciting a mantra to myself or by meditating. I needed to have that moment, those moments with people in order to slowly convince myself that, oh, wait, people aren't going to be mad at me if I make a mistake.
You broke that down so beautifully. When we say that relationships can be healing, we mean we're repeating something with the difference, it sounds like you're
They're
saying.
corrective.
Corrective
And this is
emotional
how our brains
experiences.
grow fundamentally, is we have new experiences and we change our wiring.
We override and overwrite.
Right. We also have to be willing to look at ourselves. Like that's the part of it. I think that, like we just mentioned, like we think like narcissism. Well, if I dated a narcissist or I did someone who's toxic or codependent, then I don't have a part in it. Right. Is that the way we're also overriding it? We're like, well, it was all them and we blame others. I just think you have to be someone who's also like self-aware and willing to do the work. Right. Like, for example, the people like, I just keep dating narcissists or I keep dating alcoholics or I keep dating whatever.
Well, the thing with that I find so interesting is that people that are dating narcissists often have a lot of narcissistic personality traits. Not to say they're narcissists, but there are often traits that we can be drawn to. But the whole focus on diagnosing people, again, I think is just a way to try to avoid pain and being hurt. It's also a way to avoid ourselves. If we're focusing on somebody else's problems or what they did to us, we don't have to focus on what brought us to them. We don't have to focus on the role that we played and participated in the dynamic, that we actively are choosing people that are hurting us. And why is that? What is the story behind that? Is it intergenerational? Is it from our childhood? Is it about our gender, our identity, our sexual orientation? What's happening here? And so when people are focusing on others and analyzing and labeling and blah, blah, blahing, it's a way of avoiding ourselves. And it's really not helping.
But let's move into sex for a second. We're talking a lot about intergenerational trauma. We're talking about basically our mental health and awareness. What do you see about the relationship between sex and mental health in your philosophy, with your clients, all the things?
Well, sex and relational health, I think there's obviously a huge connection between the two, especially in an adult relationship, that if it's a monogamous and sexual relationship, that sex is often one of the most, or non-monogamous or polyamorous, sex is a huge tool and skill for love, giving and receiving. So it's a pretty crucial part of all of our adult partnerships, so long as someone is sexual and their partner is too. It's a pretty central piece of connection, a piece of giving love, a piece of receiving love, a way that people often feel most loved. It can be a really important part of the experience of relational health or just feeling calm with a partner. So it's pretty huge, which is why I hate so much, which I'm sure you do as well, when people relegate sex to this like physical, it's just an orgasm, it doesn't matter, it meant nothing. For most people, it means everything. even if it's with someone that they don't even know. There's a fuck ton of meaning. So there's so much meaning and information, useful
Yeah.
information.
It's
Yeah.
not just genitals, it's also oxytocin, vasopressin, but it's
It's
also
also a lot
emotional
of
stuff.
chemicals. Yes.
But it's also a lot of feelings. This leads me to something that Todd and I have talked about a lot, which is the challenges for people who date men, whether you're a man or a woman. If you're dating a man, you are more likely to be dealing with dating a person who has been pretty aggressively socialized away from connection, taught that connection is not masculine or that it's not cool. What are your thoughts about this, Todd, about dating men specifically?
I mean, I talk about this in terms of context a lot in the book, is that the context of our lives, meaning our gender, our identity, or sexual orientation, is going to shape how we experience our life. It's going to shape how we experience our partners. And their experience is going to shape how we experience them. So that's what you're describing. You're describing the experience that cis men have growing up in a culture that denies and minimizes their ability to feel. And the result of that, which is often disconnection, maybe a lack of communication or a lack of capacity to prioritize that connection.
We're not bashing men, no.
But
Men just weren't socialized in an environment where they were, felt free or encouraged to express their feelings.
and they were penalized for it.
If you don't have any understanding or curiosity to explore what's happening for them, then you won't be able to make it through any kind of relationship, no matter what the gender of the person is, in terms of what they're presenting with and how that pisses you off. We have to have some capacity to then pause and say, well, why are they doing this? What's the story for them? Why are they communicating their hurt to me in this way where it seems like they're incompetent? It's not that they're incompetent. It's that they're limited. And it's not that they don't want to give us love. It's sometimes that they don't know how, or they never received it themselves. And so if we don't know that story, then we can't connect. So the real question is how do we connect better with people who struggle to connect? And that's developing curiosity, managing the emotions that get triggered because it's really annoying and can be really frustrating to have to continuously do emotional labor. So it's about tolerating that, even though, there's probably a lot of tolerating already happening. And being more curious and seeing if when you express that curiosity, if they can reciprocate and share. But in the absence of the ability to share and to develop more understanding, then you're fucked. It's really about trying to figure out, okay, so what's the capacity that I'm working with here? If I ask questions, if I express curiosity, if I empathize and show compassion, and really try to pull this story out of them, can I develop an understanding of who they are, and can we connect better? And if not, then fundamentally, you're not going to connect better with them.
Right. Because there's some men that obviously won't want to do that work or it won't resonate.
Yeah.
Or
And
we
to be clear,
accept the
though,
fact.
I have
Yeah.
plenty of people I know of all genders that really struggle to communicate and who are relationally incompetent and frustrate me and piss me off.
No.
For sure, though, a lot of men, because of their gender and how they were raised, deeply struggle to do the things I know that you're thinking.
I want to ask something, make a little pivot while we're talking
Yeah.
about gender and sexuality to asking you, Todd, a little bit of a personal question. We had people write in questions, and people are very curious about what it was like for you to grow up gay in the 90s.
Gay in the 90s. I grew up in the 90s, but I also grew up with a therapist, Derek, who I still see today. And I was asked questions about my sexuality in a very affirming way. And it was normalized and it was a very affirming environment. So I was very lucky in that sense, whereas many people grew up without a singular voice that was giving them positive reinforcement of affirmation or safety. But it was really weird. I don't know. I mean, I grew up thinking that I had to grieve my straight life, that I wasn't going to have marriage and children, the thing that I thought I should have that's only there for me. I didn't think I was going to live past a certain age or have a relationship or it was a bizarre experience, especially when you compare with what's happening now. Things have completely changed. But it was definitely a struggle. It was very
I
hard.
mean, when you say that,
Interesting that they're expressing curiosity about that.
you said it's interesting that they're expressing curiosity.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it's interesting just to think, you said because it's different now than it was then, but that's what I wonder. Is it? Because if we're still struggling to talk about sex and to talk about our desires and what we want, I know we're more accepting of people's sexuality and choices for sure. But when it comes down to it, do you see that there's been a change in the way people are handling it now?
Things have definitely changed in terms of the queer experience in the 90s, 80s, 70s, and now. In terms of sex, I mean, I think on the surface things have changed, but that's the surface. Underneath it is decades of sexual repression and fear and anxiety and horrible phobic things based on gender and just terribleness. So, we could say there are memes and sex toys everywhere and Instagram accounts about sex positivity everywhere, but we all still have this horrible sexual shame internalized and sex negativity and sex phobic values. So things have changed, but unfortunately, it takes a lot longer for those values to change internally for everyone.
Yeah, and I think some of us might think, "Oh, well, I'm not gay, that doesn't have to do with me," or "I don't need to be a sex positive person, it has nothing to do with me." But in the current environment, everybody has skin in this game, and so
Yeah.
it's nice to hear you reminisce about that during Pride. Isn't it cool how Todd permits you to reframe, go from what you're not liking in your partner to what you like and want?
Yeah.
It makes me feel very grown up.
Yeah, exactly. Because you talk a lot about we're all focusing around what we don't like. It's true. And how do we focus on what we do want? Right.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that I'm saying all of these things and I talk to my clients about it and I've written about it, but also, it's another thing to actually do that and experience it and shift the way you think about things. And that's why I share my story with my ex, and that's why the title is the title. Because we can collect information and insight from here until tomorrow, and no matter how much we know about ourselves, we're still going to struggle. We're still going to we're still going to suffer. Our partners are still going to disappoint us, no matter how therapized and communicative they are. And it's still going to be really hard. Which is why I thought it was really important for me to include my story in the book, because there's a lot of people talking about relationships or just life in general. And then others assume that because I'm saying these things, that it's not a problem for me. But it's been a huge problem for me. And I suffered so much. And knowing these things hasn't really, I mean, it's of course made my suffering a lot less, but
you're normalizing the fact that we're all going to be suffering and it's okay, right?
yeah,
Like
it's kind
that
of
we're
part
all
of
going
our
to have challenges.
experience. Yes.
Why don't we get into some questions? Because we got some good questions
We
from people, Todd, that
did.
people have questions for you.
Let's.
But here's one actually about texting adjacent. We're seeing each other often and sending messages daily, but it's not turning into a relationship. What do I do? So this is that whole thing about situationships, people living in
Yeah.
this gray area.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I find interesting about these questions, a lot of these questions, is they're describing what the other person is doing and not what they want. So I'm assuming they want a relationship. I'm assuming what do they want is what I want to know. Do you want to be dating this person? Do you want to be in a relationship? Do you want to marry them? What do you want? I think is the first step for them, which it sounds like they want to be formally dating them. And then they have to talk to the person about it.
Oh,
I mean,
this is the most radical intervention that Emily Morse and Todd Baratz made in my life. Are you ready?
Ready.
Wednesday Martin. Why does my husband do this? Why does he, blah, blah. And then Emily and Todd. Why don't you ask him? What?
Yeah.
No, because then I can't be in a position of self-righteousness.
Right.
Right?
Why don't you just have a
But
talk about it?
that is so crazy. So many people are so afraid to be direct. I've been married to Joel for 24 years, but I need to be reminded. Well, just ask him.
all
Don't
have
make up stories, right?
Exactly. Before we go up, because as we said, and this is what you talk about, is that we are using that to avoid feeling our own feelings. For you to be righteous,
Yeah.
but like, no, you got to talk to him.
Right.
These are all conversations. I know you said it hates comes to communication, but a lot of it is, right? Like, where are we?
Yeah.
What are we doing?
And
I'm
understanding
somebody-
what prevents communication. So like Wednesday, you're not thinking about just asking, well, what within your history, I mean, knowing your parents, I know why you don't ask. Because if you did ask, you weren't going to get it and you'd probably get something worse. So, it's something that, there's a lot of meaning as to why we don't communicate too. So we have to communicate and we have to understand why we're not communicating.
And
Okay.
it's such a radical act for people to just ask a partner or a person they're
It really
dating,
is.
hey, what are you thinking? People act like
Yeah.
it's weakness. It's not, it's strength.
Yeah, because we
And
have such
also,
fear, right?
if your partner is asking you to do something, fucking just do it. Like, seriously, if your partner is mustering up the courage to ask you to fulfill their needs, so long as it's not like moving a mountain, just do it. Like, I see these couples and they're like bargaining about basic needs. And it's like, what would you lose if you just did the thing? It's wild to me.
That is wild. What's one of the things that comes to mind?
text me. Like if you like text, someone wants to be texted more, or receive more physical affection is another one. Just give your fucking partner a hug.
Right.
Just hug them.
Yeah, it's hard for some people. I tell people, like, set a reminder on your phone. If you can't remember to hug them when you go from work, like put something every day. I come home at 5 because I was talking about like
I love
people's
that.
languages, like oh, my partner really needs touch. And I was like, well, then
Mm.
when you come home every day, you get in the house, like because sometimes we need to be reminded that they set an alarm.
Sex. Have sex.
In terms of asking for what you want and setting a reminder, a lot of times we hear from women saying, my partner goes down on me. I go down on my partner and my partner doesn't reciprocate. Just give
Well,
us
if they want reciprocation, that's a problem.
give us
Well,
a
what's the rest of the question? My partner doesn't reciprocate and I really want to receive oral sex.
I think that's the question.
That's the question.
Yeah. I've encountered this in a variety of different versions with clients. And my first question is always, how have you survived without receiving whatever it is that you're saying you want? Like people that are married for 20 years and they don't get any affection. And they say, I need affection. I need it so much. And it's like, how have you gone 20 years? Or couples who haven't had sex in years. And like, how are you managing this? But anyways, oral sex should be reciprocated if you want it.
Absolutely, oral sex
I
should
think
be.
that's a good rule. There aren't that many rules about sex and relationships, but like if somebody is performing oral
Reciprocality
sex,
is important.
You gotta have them go down. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Equal opportunity. It's
in all
very
things.
important.
Yeah.
I mean,
if I bring
yeah.
you water, you bring me water. If I go down on you,
Exactly.
you go down on me.
Yeah, right.
Reciprocate.
I mean, yeah. I mean, really, that was one of my first interventions with a boyfriend, like years ago. When I first started this show, probably so 20 years ago, I was like, what part of going, because I would ask him and he wasn't doing it. I had to be very clear, like, what part of going, I was like, are you not into it? Is it not your thing? Do you need more feedback from me? Do you think I don't like it? And he was like, yeah, it's just not my thing. I was like, well, you're not my thing. And we were
Yeah,
done.
bye.
But it is important to talk about it. It truly is. I was like,
It
bye.
is.
It wasn't his thing.
He wasn't into the going down on the vagina, on the vulva. But the thing is now that was so early on
which
that
should be
now I would have
studied.
asked more questions. I think I was happy to get the relationship done with at this point because there were other issues. But now I'm like, well, what is it about the vulva that you don't like going down on?
You would
But at
ask
that time, I was like, oh, what a great way why we should break up.
I agree.
I
Here's
bet the
another
reason
one.
why he didn't like it was because he didn't know how and he felt too
Exactly.
ashamed to ask how to do it.
Yeah, I think so too.
And
It's
I hope
like
he worked that out.
when I see a gay guy and he's like, I don't like sucking dick. I'm like, how are you gay and you don't like to suck dick?
Yeah, that happens, right? You're like, that seems
How
like
are you
part of
straight
it,
and you
right?
don't want to have a vagina and a vulva and a clit in your face?
We'll be right back with Todd Baratz after a short word from our sponsors. Don't go away. I have a question for you about sex. If you're gay or straight, like, do you see different questions come up with sex? Like, would you say that they're pretty similar or different?
I mean, as I'm
And
sure
what
you
are
know,
they?
the biggest issue is desire that people deal with is in relationships. But are you asking for differences and similarities?
Yep. Yeah. I always think it's like a lot of it is similar.
It's the same.
Truly.
It's the same.
I think so too.
Yeah.
I'm like, it is literally the same. It's just about the parts,
It's the
right?
same.
Like,
Yeah, the only difference is that anal sex can be a little bit more complicated, less easy access, and there's more timing and preparation necessary. But beyond that, it's pretty similar.
We're talking about how to love someone without losing your mind. And it seems like texting is a place where people really lose their minds. Behavior, sexual stuff not being reciprocated. And then also, I think people really lose their mind over discrepant desire. Todd, what do you advise, when you're working with a couple or an individual and there's discrepant desire?
Wouldn't it be great if you were in a relationship and you both wanted sex at the same time for the same duration at the same at the same intensity and frequency? Wouldn't that be so great? I think at the beginning of the relationship it can be like that, and then after a while the differences really start to show up. But it's so hard. Again, it requires a lot of communication and also understanding if there are any things that are actively contributing to whatever decline in desire one or both partners are having, whether that's a relational dynamic. This is what I love you talk about in your book, Emily, the pillars, to go through those pillars with each other, to see if there's anything that's a barrier to desire.
Yeah.
which is
And
usually
Emily's
Sunday.
list is really fun too. You're
Yeah.
basically saying if it just why are we calling it discrepant desire? Just call it two or more people trying to be in a
Yeah.
sexual
People.
relationship.
Well, that's part of the
Yeah.
fairy tale too. It's like, oh, we should be finding
Yes.
someone who, like you said, wants sex at the same
Yes.
time that I do, the same kind of sex at the same time of day, same amount of times per week.
And a simultaneous orgasm.
Yeah,
From
none of that
penetrative
is real.
sex.
None of
Yeah.
that exists. It doesn't.
I
But then
honestly think
because
though,
we had
like
it
if
early
you
on,
could find a partner who always wanted sex at the same time you did and you had it regularly, I don't think people would have problems.
right? Exactly. But we're also saying that doesn't exist.
It
But that doesn't
doesn't
exist.
exist.
Spoiler.
None of this exists. All this stuff that we want
No.
is a challenge. Like,
This is another thing you guys both say all the time. You're always telling people, and so I've started telling my clients, isn't it amazing that you're a grown up now? Like you're a grown up. When you were
I love
little,
that
you had
sentence.
to lose your mind
Yeah.
when you loved someone when you were little. You had no power of it. Now you're a grown up and you have power. How do your clients respond when you tell them that, Todd? Because it blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, well, it takes some time, but I think it's a big relief for people to know that the power, you're talking about the powerlessness of childhood and the powerfulness of adulthood. And it's really empowering to know that we have a lot more control and safety just by being inside our bodies as adults than we did as kids. It's a really big deal. It has a huge impact. It can be really freeing, especially when it comes to sex. And the good news for this person is since they don't know, it sounds like they don't know what would give them their sparkle, is they can try literally absolutely fucking everything and see what gives them the most sparkle.
yeah, this is the time in your life to find that. What gave you sparkle in the
Yeah.
past? What may give you sparkle now? Get
Yeah.
outside your comfort zone. Do things differently. Check out hormones.
Get your sparkle on.
Get your sparkle on. Wear
Get
more
your
sparkle.
on.
You're so sparkly. Wednesday.
You're
You
sparkly
get your sparkles
too,
on.
Emily.
You really, really do.
And so is Todd. We're all pretty sparkly
We
here,
are pretty
I must
sparkly.
say.
Todd Baratz. So I got to ask you the 5 quickie questions we ask all of our guests. Biggest turn on.
Humor.
Yeah, just
Ooh, humor's the biggest turn on. Okay, second question, what's your biggest turn off?
A lack of texting. Disinterest. Ambivalence.
Ambivalence.
Diffidence.
Yeah.
what makes good sex?
Verbal. Being really verbal.
Yeah. And what's something you would tell your younger self about sex and relationships?
Try more things.
What's the number one thing you wish everyone knew about sex?
Try more things. Use more lube.
Use more lube.
Try more things
I'm
and use
friggin-
more lube.
I'm with you. Okay, Todd, congrats on your book. Tell us where people can find
Thank
you,
you.
get the book, all the things.
You guys, this book will blow your
Funny.
mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you lose it. Find me at Your Diagnosing on Instagram.
I love how authentic and real and inspiring you are in this book. And I think
Thanks.
that people are really going to see a lot of themselves in this book. And you're really going to be able to help them with it, with your words. I love it. I think you did such a
That's the
beautiful
goal.
job on it. And it's very you're just insightful and inspiring.
And
And no bullshit.
Thank you.
and no
I appreciate
bullshit.
you saying
And
that. No
reframes.
bullshit.
No friggin' bullshit. And we love
Yeah.
that about you. And I think that's why everything
Yeah.
you do resonates with people, because it is what we need to hear right now.
And it's counterintuitive. You're making those really simplistic messages on social media. You're adding the nuance that we need. You're
We need
adding the
it.
context. You're getting us to think. So thank you, Todd. I love you.
Thanks for being you.
I'm
I
so
know.
excited.
Thank you for saying all those sweet things. Thank you for
Yeah,
having
we
me on your
love you.
show.
Buy the book, everybody. How to
Buy the
Love
book.
Someone Without Losing Your Mind. Yay.
Yeah, we all need that.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Such a fun interview with Todd. And now we're going to talk about what my turn-ons are in this episode with my producer, Falguni Lakani Adams. Falguni, let's talk about this episode.
Let's do it. This is like my fun part of the whole episode. I love getting your insight about the whole time I'm watching you do an episode. I'm like, I wonder what's going on inside her head as like points come up, because I know this is the kind of stuff that you like live for.
I
So
live
tell
for
me,
it.
what were your turn-ons from this episode?
I love that his idea, because his whole Instagram nonsense is all very like counterintuitive to what everyone else is talking about. And I love that he says, not everyone is a narcissist. Just because you don't like their behavior or they weren't that kind to you, you don't have to label everybody. So I love that notion, because you do keep hearing, he's a narcissist, she's a narcissist. We're just throwing these terms around without a lot of information about what that actually means.
I'm with you. I feel like at least once a week, I feel like one of my friends is like, oh, that guy's a jerk because he was a total narcissist. And I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of calling people narcissists when I don't like them.
To Todd's point, people who are throwing around everyone's a narcissist might have narcissistic tendencies themselves. But I also want to say that narcissism is a spectrum. So we probably all have this spark of narcissism, if you will, that we want to be loved and cherished and adored. And who doesn't want that? So it presents a little bit differently in everybody. But
It's been given a bad rap.
It has been given a bad. Use your narcissism for good and not for evil.
I love that, Emily. I'm going to start using that. That's amazing. Okay, I have some thoughts on what I thought you'd get turned on by, but I want to hear what, yeah.
Okay, so I like that one. Like basically the takeaway from this episode is that we're throwing a bunch of labels around and we can all, you can take information, people, you can watch TikTok, you can talk to all the, TikTok therapists and all the things. However, take it all in, but everything is bio-individual. So our relationship is unlike anyone else's, and we have our own experiences that we come to the table with. So while you might be educating yourself in all these terms, it doesn't mean it necessarily applies to you, and we should all take a look at our own situation because two people's relationship is unlike anyone else's relationship. So I think that is the takeaway and why I loved him, pointing that out, and that's why I really enjoy his work. So, okay, another turn on for me.
Mm-hmm.
I love this stuff. I think that it is our duty as humans to examine our past and our childhood. We're not saying that it's all disaster. You're not criticizing your parents, but there was a lot of information in the way we grew up and the patterning that is dictating how you are living today. It's dictating how you choose your friends and your lovers and the way you behave, and a lot of stuff that we struggle with can be found in that blueprint of our childhood. So
I have to tell you, the second he said family, generational history, I saw your eyes light up. You were like, yes, let's get into that. I mean, what is it? You are eternally fascinated by it. What is it about it? And have you done that work a little bit?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the work that I've done around understanding my own trauma and my own upbringing has allowed me to be more compassionate and connected to members of my family. It's so easy when you start doing the work, in quotes, and saying, oh, my father was a narcissist and my mom didn't love me or she abandoned me or all these things. And that's fine. I think it's good that these are the layers of therapy and of knowing your history is understanding where you came from. But then going a little bit deeper, Todd talks about this in his book as well and on the show, that he gives people these tools like interview your parents. Understand where they came from, understand what their upbringing was like. So then you can have more compassion and more empathy for the people in your life who are just, living out the patterns that they grew up under. So for me, it allowed me to have connections to people in my family without having just anger around things, being like, okay, for example, my mom had challenging situations of her own with her parents and her grandparents. And with anyone in my life, I want to understand my friend's history. I want to understand my partner's history because then I understand that they are acting out from a place that was really generational, lived in their body. It was in the cells of our bodies. So to me, I light up because it allows me in the work I've done, and I think for others, if they're stuck, to connect with people that we deeply love and that we want in our lives, or even people that we don't want in our lives anymore. By understanding people's personal history and where they came from, it allows us to connect deeper and more authentically in our lives.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. I will say sometimes when I hear about that, my knee-jerk reaction is fear. When I think about having to analyze my familial history, because my parents had an arranged marriage. So that's not my ideal relationship. It worked for them. They were together for 50 plus years. But I think that's why when I hear that, I'm my eyes close. Your eyes light up and mine are like, oh gosh, do I really want, what is it? And then I go to a place of what was I doing to feel loved? What did I do as a child so that I could feel loved by my parents? I don't know why my brain goes there.
Well, it's interesting. So going back to the arranged marriage thing, you said it's fear or is it shame? I wish that, because that's not the norm. That's definitely cultural for you. Do you think it's something around that's not normal? Other people's parents weren't arranged. And maybe that could be a deeper childhood thing that you felt like I'm not like everyone else?
You're absolutely, yes, it was. I actually always wished that I had the dad who would drive me and my date to something, you know? Like I wish I had the dad who would be like the person taking everybody to prom, you know, but I had to hide my relationships from my dad. I was not allowed to date at all. And it's interesting to see the patterns come up in my house where my son is dating someone, you know, dating loosely. I mean, he's 13, but he tells us everything about it. But he's dating someone who is not allowed to date. And so it's like coming up for me where I'm like, he's like, oh, it's a racial thing. And I was like, no, son, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. My parents didn't have anything against anybody. I just wasn't allowed to do it. And so, yeah, I think it is a shame thing. It's a like, but they were successful in their own right. That's what I find fascinating, right? I think that we underestimate how important and how successful you should look at love. Like if you can sustain love, that is a success story. And I don't think that our society actually really values that the way they should, you know?
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that, because it's like, and the reason why I said shame is because I heard you don't want to look at it. So I was trying to get to that. The reason why I light up is because I know how hard it is to look at this stuff, but then that is the challenge. And I'm not saying this is you, because you have a lot of depth and wisdom. Well, we talk about in the episode about connecting with men, that the challenge around connecting to people who haven't really connected to themselves. And again, this is not all men. In fact, I know many, many women like this too, all genders, where I loved when Wednesday said, it's really hard to have relationships with people who are aggressively socialized against connection. And so we use it in the context of men. But again, there's so many people like this that if we take the example of men, many men were told, buck up, don't cry, don't show emotions, don't be inquisitive, don't be compassionate, don't open up. That is not a very manly thing to do. And so when we struggle to connect with people in our lives who were told or modeled, even if men were not directly told, it's society. Society is expecting men to be the strong, mighty force that is just taking care of everything. And again, that could show up that way, or your parents did not model for you a loving. And again, this is most parents, I think, at least of our generation, did not know how to allow children to fully express emotions and feelings on the entire spectrum: anger, fear, sadness, even joy sometimes. Modern parents like yourself, I'm sure I know that you parent this way because you are a very wise, intuitive parent and loving parent. But we learn now that it takes 90 seconds to experience any emotion. I mean, look at a toddler crying. You see them. If you let them fully go through the tears of something, maybe it is 90 seconds or 2 minutes. They're crying. I want a snack. I want something. And then they switch to something else. But a lot of us are walking around in these little bodies, as little children and full-on adult bodies who never fully learned that it was okay to feel everything. And that once we feel everything, it's so healing and curative to live a more thoughtful life. So if we find people in our lives, whether it's friendships or lovers or family, where we feel like, what is it? I can't quite get there with person. And I think it's missing because they did not learn and it wasn't modeled to them to fully express emotions. And usually it's because we don't feel safe and we don't feel that it's okay and accepted, and we don't have experience. And everything is a skill set. Learning to express your emotions and your feelings is a practice for so many of us. And so I love just highlighting that the wisdom to a lot of this can be found going back into our family history.
I love that, Emily. You know what I will say too, the word safe comes up a lot when we talk about these things. And I agree with you, but I also think that we do live in a society that when you try to make that connection or when you're trying to go there with somebody, it is viewed as intensity. And that is what I think needs a reframe, because, people are like, oh, that person was so intense. They were just like really trying to connect. And it's like, no, maybe it's because you are not meeting them where they need to be. And maybe we need to say to ourselves, listen, this is where I am. Falguni, I like to connect with someone. I want a meaningful, fulfilling relationship with you because you know what? I've done the work. I've been doing the work. And even when it's shameful or fearful or all of the things, I still am doing the work. Meet me where I'm at. And we can have a really wonderful, connected relationship. And I just think that there's a lot of that too. I hear it a lot. I hear it a lot from my friends who are trying to date, where they're like, am I just too much? Am I like guacamole just too much? Like that there's a whole meme around like an avocado saying, I'm not guacamole, I'm not too much. And like that's what my friends say that. They're like, I just feel like these guys think I'm too much. I'm too intense. And it's like, no, you're not. You're okay. It's just that you need to be with someone. There's nothing wrong with that guy either, by the way.
Right.
You just need someone who can meet you where you need to be met.
Yeah. I love that the word intensity, that sometimes we are too much for people, and that's because they don't have even the nervous system or the experience taking in someone else's authenticity because they are so shut down to who they are. And the other thing we cover in this episode is that, like, that's okay. Like, not everybody has to be that either. And I don't think you're necessarily going to change people unless they want to do the work on themselves. And so sometimes we're going out with people and we're waiting or we're hoping that they'll all of a sudden get what we're trying to do. Like, no, I want to know about your childhood or your feelings. If somebody isn't in the practice of saying, you know what that made me feel, or this hurt my feelings, or, this thing happened, or willing to be vulnerable. We're also talking about vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that being willing to express our deep emotions and feelings and experiences of life is being vulnerable, and that's how you have connection. And that's why we always loved hanging out, Falgadi, since the moment we met, because
we get into it. We're like, let's go. We get into
we always get into it.
We don't ever like skip a beat on that. We have fun too. That's the thing. You can have lightness. You can have lightness in a relationship along with depth, right? I mean, there's always dark and light, and I mean, the dualities are beautiful, and the layers, and I love layers.
I love layers too.
All the layers. I want every layer.
I mean, I think depth is sexy.
You think it's a turn on?
It's a turn on. Depth is a total turn on.
In reflection, what would you say you want to expand on more? Like, we can't get to everything in an hour.
Right. Well, we kind of covered it briefly when I said, what is the connection between mental health and sex? And we sort of talked briefly about how sex isn't just about genitals. Sex isn't just about penetration. And I think it's important to expand on what we meant by that was that a lot of times we think we put sex as something we're craving and we want. We act like it's a workout, like it's something we're just going to cross off the list, and now we've done the sex thing and now we can move on to something else. But to emphasize the fact that a lot of times when we are craving sex, we really want connection. We want intimacy. We want vulnerability. You might be thinking, like, I really want sex right now because that's going to feel good, and it will. But sometimes you can have sex with people and it's just sex. You feel lonely. You feel detached. You don't feel connected. And so I think for a lot of times, all this emphasis that we put on sex, and people have mismatched libidos and all these things, and just desire discrepancy, all that is true and important. But if you go a few levels deeper, it's really, we want connection, touch, intimacy. We want to be seen, heard, loved as we truly are.
That's beautiful. I am turned on by this conversation, for real. Like, I think that even when I share little tidbits that you may not know about my life, like you just heard for the first time about my parents having an arranged marriage, you're like, lean in, tell me
so
more.
Many questions.
I saw
so
that.
Much sense.
You're like, let's turn off the mics and let's get into this. But, there's a lot. There's a lot there. Is there something that you heard in the interview that has given you pause, like really made you think, like feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't stop thinking about this thought or notion?
I think what I loved is that notion of how do we connect with people who aren't raised to connect? And so we have to learn with these people in our lives to give them the benefit of the doubt, be compassionate, be curious, do it in a loving way, try to see if people can open up. But if they can't, they just might not be your person. And that's okay too, to walk away from somebody or maybe lessen the connection you have with them and say, well, maybe they'll just be my casual friend or my casual partner, but not try to force everybody to be like you are, like I am. Like, not everybody's going to find depth super like a turn on. And like, that's okay. And I guess kind of getting out of my own way and thinking, like, loving people for who they are and how they show up. Not everybody's going to do this work. And I think that's just, I keep thinking about that. That was really powerful.
I liked it too. And I like that you raised it right now, because I think about it more often than I realize. Like, I feel like I have a pattern where if I'm not connecting with someone, I'm really trying to connect with them. Like, I'm like, what can I do to connect with them? Because I don't get it. I just don't get it. And by the way, that might have to do with my familial pattern because my dad was a very stoic man. And so I was probably always trying to penetrate that wall of like, hey, dad, like loosen up, lighten up, dad, loosen up, hug me, you know? And so maybe that's where that comes from. But the truth is that, yeah, I don't need to connect with everybody. No. And everybody doesn't need to connect with me. But that comes with age, right? Mm-hmm. Also sometimes. And that comes with doing the work and, you know what? Facing the hardship and facing those hard relationships that didn't work. Mm-hmm. Make you stronger and understand yourself better too.
Absolutely. See, that's exactly what it is, Falcony. I think that what I find to be the sweet spot of life and the biggest joy of life is getting to know myself and others, like continuing to say, like, you know what, you're never really done doing the work. And I think every time I find a new way to connect to somebody or a new way to understand myself, it just allows me to have more joy, deeper friendships, and just sort of find more people and places and things that are truly turn-ons in life. And that I see it as like removing blocks that held me back. Like I love understanding the human mind, the brain, psychology, and why it all works. So that's exactly it. It's like and it's freeing to say, it's okay if not everyone's going to be here on this journey with me, but this is where I'm at. So those are the people and that, you know, I want to be part of my life in a meaningful way. And it's okay if everyone can. I send everybody love.
I love that. You in a small way, you remind me of my dad right now, and I'll tell you how. He would always say, the world is a big place. Like, don't basically sweat these other things. Like, the world is a big place. It's expansive. You can meet another person who will connect with you. So don't worry about the person that you're not connecting with, you know, which I love. Wise. And then my mom would say, with every goodbye you learn. And that's also true.
With every goodbye you learn. You have very wise parents. Makes sense. Look at you, girl.
I always learn from you.
We learn from each other.
It's really wonderful.
Okay, well, thank you so much for your friendship and producing this incredible episode.
Thank you for sharing your turn-ons.
Yeah, I love it.
Everybody always wants to hear your turn-ons.
I'm so turned on by hot depth.
Ooh, I like that.
That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening to Sex with Emily. And if you love the show, please like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, share this with a friend or a partner. It might just spark something. It usually does. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, and X. It's all at Sex with Emily. Oh, and I've been told I give really good email. So sign up at sexwithemily.com for free guides and articles and more ways to prioritize your pleasure.